Get ready to witness the most humiliating 47 seconds ever captured inside Judge Judy's courtroom. This wasn't just a case, it was a moment of television history, one that left millions of viewers stunned, replaying the clip over and over again. Why? Because a woman named Karen thought she was clever enough to walk into Judy's courtroom and not only challenge her authority, but openly mock her Brooklyn accent. Yes, you heard that right. She mocked Judge Judy's voice to her face. The audience gasped, the cameras rolled, and Judy's eyes narrowed into that deadly stare viewers know all too well. What Karen didn't know was that she had just triggered the fastest courtroom meltdown ever seen on national television. And in less than a single minute, exactly 47 seconds, her smirk would vanish, her confidence would crumble, and she would be left sobbing in front of millions. Karen Mitchell was not just any litigant. She was the textbook definition of entitlement. Friends described her as the kind of person who demanded to see the manager if her latte foam wasn't perfect. Neighbors whispered about her constant complaints, her endless arguments over minor inconveniences, and her tendency to treat every disagreement as a full-scale legal battle. In her mind, the world was divided into two categories: people who served her and people who needed to be put in their place. When the opportunity to appear on Judge Judy's show came along, Karen saw it as her big chance. She wasn't there just to win a case over a handbag dispute. She was there to prove she was smarter, sharper, and tougher than the most famous judge on television. From the moment she walked into the courtroom, it was obvious that Karen had prepared for a performance, not a case. She strutted in as if the cameras were there just for her freshly styled hair glinting under the lights, her designer outfit carefully chosen to scream superiority. She clutched a leather portfolio filled with printouts from random websites, convinced these scraps of internet research made her more knowledgeable than someone who had presided over more than 20,000 cases. To her, Judge Judy wasn't a legendary figure with decades of experience. She was just another authority figure Karen believed she could bulldoze with arrogance. But here's the thing about Judge Judy. She doesn't just listen to your words, she studies your behavior. And from the very first eye roll Karen threw, Judy was already building her case. Every exaggerated sigh, every dismissive laugh, every side comment Karen muttered under her breath was like fuel to a fire Judy was preparing to ignite. What Karen saw as confidence, the audience recognized instantly as disrespect. And Judy? She was waiting, patient as a predator, knowing that the right moment would come to turn this entire performance into a demolition. The case itself seemed simple, at least on paper. Karen was suing her former friend over a supposedly ruined designer handbag worth around $1,000. But to Karen, this wasn't just about money. She had rehearsed this moment for weeks. She bragged to her friends that she had studied Judge Judy episodes, analyzed Judy's speech patterns, and even practiced mocking her Brooklyn accent in the mirror. Yes, that's how far she was willing to go. Karen thought the way Judy spoke was a weakness she could exploit, a way to belittle her in front of an audience and prove she was the smarter one. And so, when Judge Judy asked a simple, direct question, Karen couldn't resist. She leaned forward, smirk curling across her lips, and in a voice dripping with mockery, she exaggerated Judy's accent right back at her. "You know, Judge, it's like this." The audience froze. Gasps echoed around the room. For a split second, time seemed to stop. Judge Judy's face did not flinch, but her eyes, they locked onto Karen with a gaze that could melt steel. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Karen's smug chuckle as she leaned back, convinced she had just scored a point. What Karen didn't realize was that she had just walked directly into the most dangerous trap of her life. Because Judge Judy does not take mockery lightly, and in just 47 seconds Karen would go from mocking Judy's voice to crying like a child who had just been caught red-handed. This wasn't going to be a mild scolding. This was about to become the most viral courtroom takedown in history. Smash that like button right now if you believe respect isn't optional in a courtroom. And if you think arrogance always gets what it deserves, make sure you're subscribed, because this story is only just beginning. Judge Judy didn't respond right away to Karen's mockery. That was her style, silence sharper than any insult. She leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and let the weight of the moment sink in. The audience, stunned by Karen's brazen mimicry, shifted in their seats. You could feel the tension building like the air before a thunderstorm. Everyone in that courtroom knew something explosive was about to happen. Judy's reputation wasn't just built on rulings. It was built on moments exactly like this. She didn't just administer justice. She turned arrogance into a public lesson. For the viewers at home, Judge Judy's Brooklyn accent wasn't a weakness. It was a badge of authenticity, a sound that carried decades of courtroom authority. But for Karen, it was a punchline, an opening she thought she could exploit to humiliate Judy. She had no idea that Judy had already read her paperwork and seen through her game. The judge's eyes had scanned the case file earlier, and she'd noticed the inconsistencies, the exaggerated damages, the story that didn't quite line up. Judy had seen thousands of plaintiffs like Karen before, and every one of them had walked in with swagger, only to leave crushed by the reality of facts and law. Judy finally spoke, her tone deceptively calm. "Ms. Mitchell," she said, her words cutting like glass, "this is a courtroom, not a comedy club. You will address me with respect." It was not loud, not dramatic, but the controlled authority in her voice made the audience sit up straighter. Karen's smirk widened. She thought she had gotten under Judy's skin. "Well, Your Honor," Karen drawled, dragging the vowels, "I was just trying to keep things light." Another ripple of discomfort moved through the room. The audience knew this wasn't confidence, it was provocation. Karen had crossed an invisible line and Judy was tightening the rope. To understand what came next, you have to appreciate who Judy is. This wasn't just any judge. By this point in her career, she had handled over 20,000 cases. She had dealt with scam artists, manipulators, habitual liars, and every type of entitled personality imaginable. She didn't just preside, she dissected people. With one glance at Karen, Judy had already sized her up. A woman who thought charm and mockery could overpower truth. Judy had spent decades dismantling exactly this type of arrogance. And she wasn't about to let Karen turn her courtroom into a stage for disrespect. Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to that dangerously quiet tone long-time viewers recognized as the calm before the storm. "Did you just mock the way I speak? In my courtroom?" The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Karen blinked, then shrugged. "Well, if the shoe fits," she quipped, her voice rising just enough to remind everyone that she thought she was still in control. The audience gasped audibly. Even the cameraman steadied his frame, knowing this was no longer just a handbag case. This was about to become the viral moment of the season. That one smug reply was the spark Judy needed. She had given Karen a chance to back down, to show humility, but Karen doubled down instead. Judy's eyes narrowed, her voice sharpened. "Let me explain something to you, Ms. Mitchell. My accent does not change the law. My accent does not alter facts. But your arrogance, that changes everything." The courtroom went silent. Karen's face twitched as she realized Judy was shifting the ground beneath her feet. What she thought was a clever joke had just become the very thing that would destroy her credibility. But Judy wasn't finished. She had already spotted contradictions in Karen's paperwork, numbers that didn't add up, timelines that made no sense. While Karen had spent her energy preparing jokes and insults, Judy had been quietly preparing the kill shot. And now she was ready to pull the trigger. Karen didn't know it yet, but she had just walked into a trap meticulously set by someone who had been humiliating arrogant litigants on national television for more than 2 decades. The audience leaned forward, hungry to see what would happen next. Judy straightened her papers, adjusted her glasses, and gave Karen one last look that said everything without words. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." And so the countdown began. 47 seconds. That's all it would take to turn a mocking smirk into a full-blown breakdown. In less than a minute, Karen's performance would collapse, her voice would crack, and her carefully constructed facade would disintegrate before the eyes of millions. She thought she had embarrassed Judy. Instead, Judy was about to make her the most unforgettable cautionary tale in courtroom history. Smash that like button right now if you think Judy's accent is a strength, not a weakness. And comment "Respect the court" if you believe arrogance should always be punished. Because what happens next will show you exactly how fast Judy can turn disrespect into devastation. The moment Judge Judy leaned forward, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted completely. Karen, who had strutted in as though the cameras existed to flatter her, suddenly looked smaller. Judy had allowed her the rope and Karen had taken it, loop by loop, tying it around her own neck. Now it was time for Judy to pull. "Ms. Mitchell," Judy began, her voice calm but lethal. "You seem to think this is a performance. Unfortunately for you, the only act being performed here is your own downfall." Her words sliced through the silence. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but Judy wasn't finished. "You mocked my accent. You laughed at the way I speak. But accents do not win or lose cases. Evidence does. And that's where your story collapses." Judy lifted the paperwork Karen had submitted. The audience could see the stack of documents wobbling slightly in her hand. "Let's start with your damages. You claim this designer handbag cost you $1,000, and yet, in your written statement, you value it at $800. Which is it, Ms. Mitchell?" Karen stammered, caught off guard. "Well, I meant after taxes," but Judy cut her off sharply. "After taxes? Handbags do not appreciate in value because you decide to make them more expensive in your imagination. That is lie number one," the audience murmured. Judy pressed forward. "And here's another. You claim the bag was destroyed at a dinner party on April 15th. But in your initial filing, you wrote April 20th. Which is it? Or do you simply change dates the way you change accents?" Karen flushed, her bravado fading. She tried to wave it off as a mistake, but Judy wasn't letting go. "Mistakes happen once. You've made 17? I counted them before you even opened your mouth today. 17 lies, contradictions, and exaggerations. And then you thought mocking my voice would cover for your lack of truth." The room went still. This was the countdown, 47 seconds of pure demolition. Karen's smirk cracked first. Her lips tightened, eyes darting nervously. "Your Honor, that's not fair," she began, but Judy struck again. "Fair? You dare talk about fairness after mocking the very court you begged to hear your case? The only thing unfair here is the time we've wasted listening to your arrogance." 15 seconds in, Karen's hands were trembling. She reached for her papers, trying to gather herself. Judy's voice only grew sharper. "You prepared jokes. I prepared facts. You rehearsed mockery. I reviewed the evidence. Which of us looks foolish now?" By 30 seconds, Karen's voice cracked. The confident drawl was gone, replaced by a panicked whine. "I was just being passionate," she cried. Judy's eyes narrowed. "Passionate? No, arrogant. You disrespected this courtroom, disrespected me, and in doing so, you disrespected yourself. Passion fights for truth. Arrogance laughs at it. And arrogance always loses." The audience was transfixed. Karen's perfectly styled hair was coming undone as she ran shaky hands through it. Her designer blazer looked less like power and more like a costume. Her once proud posture had crumbled into a slouch of desperation. At 47 seconds, the meltdown was complete. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as her voice broke into sobs. "Please, Your Honor," she whimpered, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I didn't mean any disrespect. I was nervous, I was trying to—" But Judy didn't allow excuses. She delivered the line that would echo across the internet. "You thought mocking my accent made you powerful. Now the only thing mocked is you." The courtroom erupted, not in laughter but in a stunned silence heavy with satisfaction. The countdown was over. Karen Mitchell, who had entered the room rehearsing jokes and insults, was now reduced to a sobbing figure, begging for mercy from the very judge she had dared to ridicule, and every second of it was immortalized on camera. Smash that like button if you believe Karen got exactly what she deserved in those 47 seconds. Comment "justice served" if you think Judy's demolition was legendary. And stay tuned, because the verdict and Karen's ultimate humiliation was still to come. The 47 seconds had ended, but the echoes of Karen's meltdown still hung in the courtroom. She sat slumped at the plaintiff's table, her once proud posture reduced to trembling shoulders and tear-streaked cheeks. Judge Judy, unfazed by the display of desperation, adjusted her robe and spoke with a clarity that carried the weight of finality. "Ms. Mitchell, let me make something very clear. You don't win cases with arrogance. You don't sway a court by mocking accents. In my courtroom, facts matter. Respect matters. And today you showed neither." Karen sniffled, fumbling through her scattered paperwork, but Judy had no interest in watching her scramble. "You claimed damages of $1,000. You provided contradictory statements, false dates, and exaggerated numbers, and then you thought the smartest move was to insult this court. Let me save you any further embarrassment. Your claim is dismissed with prejudice." The words landed like a gavel strike, final and devastating. Karen gasped as if she had just been struck. Her case wasn't just denied, it was demolished in the harshest terms possible. But Judy wasn't finished. She leaned in, her gaze sharp enough to pierce through Karen's last defenses. And let me give you some free legal advice, Ms. Mitchell. The next time you walk into any courtroom, remember this moment. Remember that mocking authority doesn't elevate you, it buries you. Because what you just did today wasn't courage, it was self-destruction. Karen's sobs grew louder, but the verdict had been delivered. The audience in the courtroom remained silent, watching as the self-proclaimed know-it-all collapsed completely. This wasn't just a lost case, it was a televised downfall. And within hours, that downfall would belong not just to the courtroom, but to the entire internet. The aftermath was swift and merciless. When the episode aired, Karen's mocking imitation of Judy's accent and her subsequent breakdown spread like wildfire. Clips of her smirking, then sobbing within the same minute, racked up millions of views across social media platforms. TikTok users stitched her downfall with captions like, "Arrogance has a price," while Twitter lit up with hashtags like, "Respect the court," and "Accent of justice." Memes exploded, contrasting Karen's mocking tone with her tearful pleas. She had come into the courtroom hoping for validation, but had instead become the internet's newest cautionary tale. Her local community recognized her instantly. Neighbors who once tolerated her endless complaints now crossed the street to avoid being associated with her. Parents at her children's school whispered, some even sending links to the viral clip in group chats. Karen, once obsessed with asserting authority, found herself stripped of it entirely. She wasn't feared or respected anymore. She was mocked. Exactly the fate she had intended for Judge Judy. Meanwhile, Judy's reputation only grew stronger. Legal experts praised her handling of the case, calling it a masterclass in courtroom authority. Media outlets ran headlines like "Judge Judy destroys mocking plaintiff" in 47 seconds, and "Respect isn't optional in Judy's court." For longtime fans, this was another reminder of why Judy remained America's toughest judge. She didn't just rule, she educated. And her lesson this time was simple. Never mistake kindness or authenticity for weakness. For Karen, the ripple effects were devastating. Job opportunities dried up once employers connected her name to the viral video. Online commenters flooded her social media accounts, forcing her to shut them down. Even her closest friends distanced themselves, unwilling to defend behavior that the whole world had seen. Karen had wanted 15 minutes of fame. She got it, but not in the way she dreamed. Instead of being celebrated, she was immortalized as the woman who mocked a judge and paid the price in under a minute. And yet, for viewers, the moral was clear. Arrogance always collapses. Respect always matters. And in Judge Judy's courtroom, you cannot hide behind smirks or jokes. Judy herself closed the case with a line that echoed across millions of screens. Humility wins. Arrogance loses. That's not just law, it's life. So if you're watching this and you believe Judy delivered the justice Karen so desperately needed, smash that like button right now. Comment "respect" if you think authority should never be mocked. And don't forget to subscribe for more legendary moments where arrogance meets its reckoning. Because in Judge Judy's world, disrespect isn't just punished, it's televised for everyone to see.